If you look around my office, you might realize I have kind of a love for dark, twisted cartoons. And a lot of that may be because I grew up with a lot of dark, twisted cartoons. Now, I'm not talking about the ones like Batman or ones that were meant for older kids. I'm talking about the ones that were meant for little kids, and they probably should have been made for little kids. And I loved the hell out of them. I enjoyed how much they scared me. I loved how every time you got through one, you felt a little tougher. So I'm doing a series reacting and reviewing them. We're gonna analyze how creative they are, how dark they are, and if the dark, twisted tone was warranted. So join me in taking a look at some Dark Toons. We've all seen clips, even memes of Donald Duck going crazy, but have you ever seen an entire episode dedicated to it? Duck Pimples was released in 1945. I think it's safe to say it is the weirdest Donald Duck cartoon ever made. Let's take a look. That's a great title card. You can already tell this is going to be a little different than the average Donald Duck cartoon. Yeah, see, how many Donald Duck cartoons start off that way? You can already tell this is going to have a darker tone than the other ones. I should definitely point out this was directed by Jack Kinney. If you don't know that name, you definitely should. If there's any Disney cartoon you remember or laughed really hard at, it was probably his. On top of his cartoons being the funniest, he also had kind of this mean-spirited dark edge to him. He directed Ichabod and Mr. Toad. He directed a lot of the darker scenes from Dumbo and Pinocchio. Remember those one or two really dark Disney cartoons you saw growing up? Those were his too, so he's definitely a name worth checking out.
Relax. Just relax.
Even that voice is a little creepy. I love it.
A woman speaks.
So not that this cartoon makes a ton of sense, but one of the important things to know going in is before television, besides going to the movie theater, people would listen to radio dramas, and radio dramas were either comedies or they were mystery, suspense. They were these dark, creepy stories. So that's very much what Donald is listening to here. And as you'll see, he's going to combine it with reading scary books as well. So that's the most you can get of a logical reality from this.
Isn't the view lovely from up here, Harold? Harold! Harold! You're pushing me!
Again, how often do you hear that in Donald Duck?
The ape! The ape! He's behind you!
Alright, so something to keep in mind, the reason I emphasize this is Donald Duck going insane, is like with this, you could just argue that's his imagination. That's an anime way of showing his imagination getting the best of him. But keep watching. It kind of goes beyond that. Look at this dude. What a great design.
Are you Mr. D. Duck?
One of the things I love is that his eyes get bigger every time he opens his mouth, which is probably just an animation glitch. You know, they're just reversing the frames back and forth. But it looks great. It looks intimidating. These angles too, these are very intense angles, extreme high angles, extreme low angles, and again, in a run-of-the-mill Donald Duck cartoon, that's not what you usually get. Oh my god! Oh, okay.
If I sell just 6 more subscriptions, I'll win a real Moxie bicycle.
Okay, so this is a typical joke. Someone looks intimidating, threatening, and then it's just someone doing something very innocent. And then you see him riding this invisible bike. Again, it's like a little weird for a Donald Duck cartoon, but it's like a cartoon, it's animation. It kind of goes with the territory, but keep watching.
Now you're gone and bent the wheel.
Okay, so that bit of him disappearing there, you could say, oh, so it's like a ghost. But the way this all goes, they never make it clear exactly what's going on. I think by starting off with him disappearing, it immediately sets it's gonna be different. The tone, everything in this is just gonna be off, and it's wonderfully off in this. Yeah, I remember reading those books. Thrill, death, spook, hate. Watch Donald's eyes throughout the majority of this cartoon. They are more buggy than they have ever been. And part of the reason for that is Donald, weirdly, where he's usually the center of comedy, in this one he's mostly the straight man. He's reacting to the strange stuff going on. He's not the strange person. Everything around him is what's odd and weird. He's very much like Alice in Alice in Wonderland.
Skip with the dough.
Big Louie chuckled.
Leave them other guys holding.
And you notice he's reading the book, but he's also listening to the radio, so that's kind of the idea of these two art forms clashing here.
Furtively glancing over his shoulder, as if in apprehension.
That's a great visual.
I'm innocent, I tell you, you gotta help me.
Now, even though your focus is going to be on the animation in the foreground, watch the backgrounds. They are constantly changing, and not only do they have a lot of shadows, but the angles in them, it's very sort of distorted Art Deco, and they're just so cleverly done. And anytime the mood or the music or anything like that changes, the background changes. And it's just such a subtle little thing that you wouldn't pick up as a kid, but man, as an adult, it's really something to appreciate.
He's got him.
Aha!
Look at that, a background change that didn't even show a change, you're just suddenly somewhere else.
A big guy like you, stealing.
I love how the woman's arm comes up like a cobra out of a basket. Big moment here, in my opinion, where, like we said before, with the book salesman disappearing, like it's already setting that the tone and the humor is going to be a little different. Here is where it really sets up this is going to be just completely different style of humor that Disney usually doesn't do. So he has these bracelets. They're shiny, they're pretty and everything, and he's looking at them. What would you imagine a normal Disney cartoon would happen? He would maybe hide them. He would maybe, steal them or something like that. But no, what does he do? He takes off his hat, which has coffee in it, and he dunks and eats them like donuts. Boom. That immediately sets up the type of humor the rest of this cartoon is going to be. And it's a type of humor you just don't see in this kind of cartoon. You maybe see it in Tex Avery or something like that, but not this. Ever wonder where Jessica Rabbit came from?
I'm just a little girl who's lost her pearls.
Look at that doll in the background. Everything is meant to look disturbingly distorted in this.
Oh dear, I don't know where to find them.
What's interesting in comparing her design to Jessica Rabbit, because you can clearly see where they got the influence, where Jessica Rabbit was very much the proportions were exaggerated, and that's where the comedy came from. With her, the proportions aren't as exaggerated, but the movements are. Everything is very slinky, very wavy, just sort of like dainty to the 90th degree, pretty much. I think you can kind of see in different ways how you can exaggerate the layout of a character, whether it be by movement or even them just being still. Roger Rabbit, I don't think Jessica Rabbit moving like that would make sense. The animation is usually more solid. Even Roger is a little bit more solid than animation you see here, but in this, it makes sense for her to be super, super wavy.
Now look, chum. We don't want to have to get nasty, do we?
Again, you notice Donald hasn't had many lines in this either. He really is the observer.
Give the nice lady back her.
Kidnapped! Okay, where's the dame?
So you're quickly seeing this is not relying as much on slapstick, as much as surrealism. This is kind of like a Monty Python sketch. The motivations of the characters are there, but they constantly switch, and their attitudes kind of switch, which Looney Tunes dabbled with, but this one's really taking it to a new level, where they're adding just this uncomfortable atmosphere to it as well. It's threatening. All the characters are threatening in some way, and Donald is just there seeing the whole thing, not knowing what to do. So there's this immediate intimidation throughout the whole thing.
Clark! The hot iron!
Case in point, why would the woman do that and imitate his movements? It's not because it really makes sense, it's because it's just adding to the silliness. There's something very dreamlike about all this. Everybody's focus constantly switches around. Instead of looking for her pearls, she's just gonna make this scene a little bit more goofy. Reality is totally flexible in this. Beyond just the characters, everything about it is flexible. Look at that, that's wonderfully surreal. You know, you go from these very fleshed out characters that are very three-dimensional in how they're drawn to something just so clearly flat. The eyebrows, the hair, everything is completely flat so it can hold that take one and all the little cards there.
Here, son, hold these. Ouch!
Again, some great backgrounds there. Go back, pause it, slow it down, they look great. Another weird moment in pacing. There's a good, 10 seconds of them just looking in this book and you hear all these sounds. It's completely still. It just adds to the uncomfortable nature of this entire thing.
I just gotta find my pearls.
The reason the surreality, I think, works in this still is that there are still very loose motivations. You know, the woman's trying to find her pearls, the cop is trying to find the woman, trying to find out what happened to her, as well as the pearls. Even the guy that came in with the little hot pokers, I mean, he's just there to give hot pokers and then he disappears. So they do have motivations. It's the way they go about it and how focused they stay on it, which isn't incredibly much, but they do constantly go back and forth, and that's part of the fun of it.
Hello.
Look at that, he's using Donald as a phone now. Like, you wouldn't see Mickey Mouse use Goofy as a phone or anything like that. Like, this is something that's just so in its own world.
Hello, Mabel. This is Pauline.
Pauline might also be Donkey Kong inspiration. They do wear the same color dress.
The whole dame that's missing.
What game?
What dame? Why, this dame.
This is also, I believe, the only Donald Duck cartoon that almost uses 100% organ music. And again, that goes back to the radio dramas. They used a lot of organs, and there was something very haunting about it. Even the shows that were meant to be very lighthearted or comedic, they would use organ music, and there was always something kind of creepy about it. So it's very clever of them to tap into that.
Am I gonna have to cut him out here?
This scene was cut out many times when it was shown on television, and you can kind of see why. It's a very aggressive image. There's a knife at Donald's throat. There's a woman with an axe about to hack whichever of them. I don't even think it matters. I think it serves as a reminder of how refreshingly mean-spirited this cartoon is, as well as a lot of Jack Kinney cartoons.
Stop! Who's that?
J. Harold King, the author.
This is one of the few pleasant backgrounds they have, but it still looks very odd. It's very Maurice Noble in sort of this weird, flat, abstract, but kind of these very simple shapes that stand out and weird patterns. And I think the reason they did that is because the author is here. The author is a normal guy, it looks like, and it kind of looks like someone who'd be on the beach and enjoying a vacation or something like that. In fact, he's probably taking time out from his vacation to go and save Donald's life or something. So again, just little touches like that.
The thief is...
Yes.
Out with it!
Hennessy.
Again, look at that face. Those eyes are constantly going nuts.
Not you, Hennessy.
Yes.
That's me. I done it.
Wonderful humor. He doesn't know he did it until the author said he did it, and then he just completely goes along with it. Just whatever the story brings it, or whatever the environment or the emotions bring, they just go along with it. They don't say no to anything, and I think that's how you get true surrealism. You just don't say no to anything.
Take that!
Oh, you got me.
See, even Donald's just going along with it, even though he hasn't been shot. Whoa, that dress went pretty high up there. It was a more innocent time, or so they want you to think.
Really nothing there, is there?
Well, possibly it was only your imagination.
God, it's such a creepy voice, and I think what adds to it is that the voice starts off just a normal, kind of scary voice, and then there's suddenly an echo. Just everything is constantly changing in this. And of course, you see the payoff. Fucking wonderful. What a fantastic cartoon. What I love is that ending. You've seen that ending a million times in a ton of other stories, books, movies, cartoons, where some sort of adventure is going on, then they reveal at the end, it's a dream, and then or was it, where they have one little item that blurs reality, where with this, the entire episode is like that. Reality and the characters are constantly blurred. So I think to have this idea that always seems kind of like a weird cop-out at the end of so many stories. I mean, it seems like a cliche now. For that cliche to just be the whole story, I think is just so clever and just really thinking outside the box. And as you notice, there's no exact logic as to what's going on. Did Donald imagine it? Is it ghosts? Is it just his imagination? Are these things really coming to life? There's no direct explanation. So I love that. And when I saw this as a kid, I didn't know what to think of it, but I just love that it was so different, and I couldn't get a grasp on it. And I think that helps both children and adults really think more abstractly. This is a very surreal, ungrounded, dark, weird cartoon, possibly about Donald just absolutely losing his mind, going insane, because that's the closest thing to an explanation anyone can come up with this. It might be my favorite Donald Duck cartoon, though it's hard to say because there's funnier ones and ones where he's more the focus, but there's just no other Disney cartoon like this. I mean, it's just so in its own world, and I love environments that just create their own worlds, and the characters go along with the environment too. Like, they'll shift and work with these rules, even if the setup is there are no rules, or very, very few rules. Duck Pimples is a wonderful short, very strange, very surreal, wonderful artwork. If you want to just open up your mind, you're trying to get some creative juices flowing and think outside the box, this is a wonderful thing to watch. I really super highly recommend it. Hey everyone, I got a couple of these lined up. If there's any particular cartoon you want me to look at as being very dark or twisted, leave it in the comments below. Again, I'm not really looking for movie scenes or cartoons meant for teenagers or older. I'm talking about ones meant for little kids, but still scare the shit out of you. Whether it's an old cartoon or a new cartoon, let me know what you want me to look at.